My name is Ali, I'm a doctor and YouTuber,
I'm Taymor, I'm a data scientist and writer,
and you're listening to Not Overthinking.
the weekly podcast where we think about happiness, creativity, and the human condition. Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Not Overthinking. Ali, what's going on?
Oh, mate, I'm actually cream crackered.
Really?
I've just been working all weekend. It's now 10:30. I've just arrived back home. I've got my cup of peppermint tea, and we have to record this freaking podcast episode. But it's fine. It's all good. It's all about the consistency, and it's one of those things where I feel like, you know, it's a lot harder to start than it is to kind of continue. Like with most things in life.
Yeah, especially when I'm pulling the weight in terms of producing the topic for this week.
In fairness, I think I pulled my own weight last week, so it's fine if you pull all the weight this week. Although I did have some things to talk about, but you were obsessed with this whole transactional analysis stuff and wanted to talk about that. So I guess that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, so I do have a topic for this week. But before that, we should probably say a word about our sponsors for this episode, which is SeatGeek. SeatGeek is literally the easiest way. No, I can't.
That's a very niche reference. I feel like most.
Is it?
It's a very specific kind of podcast sponsor.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a copy of
something like
David
Audible.
Dobrik's.
Yeah,
I was doing a bit
Audible
from David Dobrik's vlog. That's what I was doing.
I know. I mean, I think I know that now, having now become addicted to David Dobrik. Have you seen the video he posted the other day?
The most recent one.
Yeah.
It's
good, isn't it? It's so nice.
Yeah, I think his whole giving away money thing is quite interesting. So basically, for those of you who haven't yet watched David Dobrik's vlogs for some reason, what he often does is give away large amounts of money or expensive items to his friends and other random people. So, he's given his friends I think he bought one of his friends a Ferrari. He's given away, 50 cars or something over the past few years. And every now and then, every few vlogs, he will just give away a few tens of thousands of dollars to various people. And in his most recent video, he gave away a ton, many sort of $10,000 checks to families in his local area who needed it. And the thing, initially it didn't quite sit, this whole thing of giving away money to needy people and filming it for your vlog. It didn't really sit right with me because, I don't know, I guess in the culture I've sort of been grown up in, it's seen as I don't know. It's you're not supposed to be showy about kind of doing good deeds or charity and things like that.
It's seen as crass in a way.
I think definitely in the UK it's definitely I don't know. It would be seen as a bit crass. But yeah, my initial reaction to that was kind of oh, this is a bit weird. But I was to be honest, I can see it being a valid thing to do in a different kind of culture,
And you know how David Dobrik has all that money to give away to people?
Yeah.
Because of sponsors such as Skillshare, who are very kindly sponsoring this episode of the podcast. Incidentally, I've actually got a story about Skillshare, which I was going to talk about, apart from the fact that they're sponsoring this. So, earlier today, I released a video on the channel which was the first episode of Book Club, a series where I do book discussions and things. And it was looking at a book called The Unfair Advantage, which I filmed an interview for a few months ago before the whole social isolation thing really kicked in. And my mate Angus, who is one of my kind of newer team members, he actually edited that entire video. And actually, it was his first time editing a video, at all. And all of the comments were oh my God, this is incredible editing. Ollie, you've really upped your editing game and all this sort of stuff. And I was just kind of smiling as I was hearting all these comments because it was literally his first edit. And you know how he actually learned how to edit videos?
From your Skillshare class.
Yeah, genuinely, from my Skillshare class.
Wow.
He had literally never edited a video in his life. He downloaded Final Cut, the 30-day trial of it. I've subsequently bought him the actual license because the trial expired, and I'm a generous dude like that, Right. And yeah, just by going through my Skillshare class on how to edit videos, he edited that video, and I think it's one of the best edited videos that I've ever released. He put a load of effort into it, and we had 3 rounds of kind of revisions where I was giving him feedback on frame.io, which is a feedback kind of website. But it was his first video, and people are watching it and commenting that, oh my God, this is incredible, this is amazing editing.
This
is the power of my Skillshare class on Final Cut Pro, which you should definitely check out by going to skillshare.com/notoverthinking if you're not interested in becoming a pro editor on YouTube. Incidentally, you can also become a pro editor by following that class, and then you can freelance out your skills and make money on the side while you're stuck in lockdown. But if you're not interested in that, if you're more interested in kind of, playing it straight down the line, you can also check out my class on Skillshare called How to Study for Exams, an evidence-based masterclass or something like that. And that's like 4.5 hours long worth of content where me and a few friends who did well in exams over the past few years, we go in depth about all these classes. Anyway, all that said, go to skillshare.com/notoverthinking for your free 2-month trial. Because it's really good, it's good for your life, but it also helps the podcast out. And it means that one day, if we get enough sponsors like Skillshare, who are very kindly sponsoring this episode, we might also be able to give money away to, I actually, on that note, I've had about 10 emails in the last few weeks from people from different countries asking me for money.
Yeah, I got some Instagram DMs from someone who was trying to get to you through me.
Oh, well,
to ask you for money. I'll ask me to ask you for money.
Oh.
Yeah.
How did that go?
I messaged you about it.
Did you?
Yeah. It might have been. This was like 3 or 4 weeks ago.
It might have been the same, one of the same dudes who emailed me. Like, I'm really not sure what to, like, how to respond to those. Like, I've just been ignoring these emails because, like, what do you do?
Yeah, I was also thinking, like, what's the right move here? Because, like, objectively, there are many, all these various people definitely need the money a lot more than you do, right?
Yeah, sure.
Like, for example, the person who messaged me was a student, I think in Nigeria, who was at medical school. She had to take out a loan to pay for her medical school fees. And she worked like a part-time job in order to pay off that loan. But then once the whole lockdown stuff happened, she could no longer work the part-time job, so she could no longer keep up with her loan repayments. And so she was, asking for some help with that. And it's kind of like, that's a pretty good cause.
Yeah, but what's the appropriate response? Because, like, it's one of those things, like, if I, for example, walk by a homeless dude in the street, it would be no skin off my back or whatever the phrase is to give the dude some money, right?
Right.
But I don't know. It's this whole institution of giving money to individuals. I just have absolutely no idea what frame of reference to, like, or even how to think about it. It's not something I've ever thought beyond, like, I guess I suppose what's in my mind is that, oh, well, if I help one homeless dude, then I have to help them all. And therefore I can't help them all. Therefore I'm not going to help the one. I feel like that is a big part of the thought process that goes into this.
Yeah.
Because, like, with these 10 people asking for money, yes, I could give them money, but then the thing in my head is that, this, it sets a bad precedent. This is just not how life works. It means that I have to give money to everyone who asks me for money. There are other better causes to give them money. How do you think about this stuff?
Yeah, this is, I spent a while thinking about this over the years. So my policy, okay, so I think that the thing of, like, if I give money to one person, I have to give money to everyone. That's just not true, right? Like, that's not true. It's
absolutely not true. I'm just saying, kind of the various excuses that go through my mind. Not wiring this money to some Nigerian girl.
So, like, I think so. When I was at university in Oxford, there was lots of homeless people, and so this was something that came up quite a lot, and I ended up thinking about it. And my policy is basically, so a lot of people would object to, like, for example, giving money to essentially random people on the street, for example, homeless people, because they'll maybe do some thinking about what are they going to spend the money on? Maybe they'll just buy drugs or something. And
that seems to be the classic.
It's a common objection. I don't know. Maybe it's valid in some cases. It's more valid than others. And, like, there are a lot of scammers out there as well. Like, there's lots of people. I've been scammed in London and in Oxford by people. The sort of posing as, like,
prostitutes.
not prostitutes, but someone will approach you. They'll pretend like they can't really speak English. They'll ask for money and say that they, they're like a refugee or something, and they may well be. And then, like, you'll walk back and you'll give them some money or something. And there's lots of scams. Like, you walk past them, again, and they'll have forgotten who you were, and they'll give you the same spiel saying, like, oh, I just need one more pound, So, like, there's obviously lots of scams. And so, like, it's not completely insane to think about the other person's intentions. I just find that, like, it's not something I want to do, sort of, like, looking at my fellow man and, like, trying to make a judgment about whether I'm being, like, lied to or something. I don't care for it. So, in general, I don't worry about that. I just think, from my point of view, this is someone who needs the money more than I do, and I'm in a position to give it. So broadly, why not? Okay. But
I mean, yeah, I would agree with that. If someone comes up to me and says, "Hey, bro, have you got some change?" and I actually have change,
if I've
then
paid,
sure, yeah.
If I've changed or cash, then it's like I don't see how I can't give it to them.
but so why is that any different to some Nigerian medical student asking for $100, for example?
Right? Yeah, that's the thing. It's not. I think the other like thing that goes through my head is like, okay, I could give like a tenner to this homeless person in Oxford. Or like I could give the same tenor to, what might be seen as a more worthy cause, like buying
against Malaria Foundation.
Yeah, buying half a malaria net or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the kind of objection that goes through my mind. And I think it's a valid objection, and I don't think there's really a way out of it. But my way, I just sort of have accepted that I'm imperfect, and I'm going to give in to the immediate person asking for money in front of me rather than the distant person who needs the money more, just because I'm lazy or whatever, or I want more of a emotional reward for it or whatever. Like I just say, look, I'm not perfect. I'm just going to do this and I'm not going to think about it.
Okay. Yeah. I think I'm broadly on the same page as you. Like if someone were to come up to me on the street and ask me for money and it's kind of essentially no friction to give the money, I would quite happily give the money. Like it's not a big deal,
right?
But when it comes to someone abroad asking me to kind of go to Western Union and wire them some money, that's just not going to happen. And that comes into that then falls into the same calculation of, okay, is this what I could actually be doing? But is this the best kind of good I could be doing with my money? And I would rather donate that to the Against Malaria Foundation as like an easy win in terms of an effective, effective charity.
Yeah, I think the sort of international wire transfer situation it's a bit different because it's actually not easy to do that. So, yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, now that we've got that sorted, oh yeah, we segued from our sponsor nicely into that. That wasn't it, or wasn't even on my list of things to talk about. I've got a couple of other things that I've been vaguely thinking about, but I wonder if you just want to launch into the transaction analysis stuff, because, or potentially we could talk about my things, and it might mean that we have a long enough episode and we can do the TA stuff next.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let's talk about my things. So there's basically been like one huge event in my life this week.
Whoa.
And that is I read a book.
No.
It's not quite as huge an event as it would be were you to have read a book.
Very good.
But nonetheless, I read a book. The book is called what's it called?
Oh, damn! Huge event.
It's that good.
Life-changing.
Life-changing event. It's called A Million Miles in 1,000 Years. Have you ever heard of this book?
I haven't. Wow. Okay.
I'd like literally never heard of it. It's by a dude called Donald Miller, and Donald Miller is a fella who is a professional writer, and he wrote a memoir about his life or something like a few years ago, and it became like a bestseller or something. So he became like famous through that. Well, okay. As in like sort of famous, as famous as people who write memoirs can feasibly get these days. But then he was approached to turn his memoir into a movie, and they wanted to turn it into like a feature film. And so he's written this book, A Million Miles in 1,000 Years, which tells the story of, as in the subtitle of this book is What I Learned While Editing My Life. And essentially he's kind of talking about how how he's living his life, and then he gets approached by these two filmmakers from Hollywood, and they want to turn his life into a movie, and they end up hanging out a lot. And essentially what these filmmakers are saying is that, look man, no one wants to watch a movie about your life because your life is boring, and actually all of our lives are boring. People want to watch a movie that has like a story to it.
Right.
And this book, A Million Miles in 1,000 Years, it was recommended through this kind of coaching program that I'm doing about how to grow your YouTube channel, about kind of the importance of storytelling as being, and the guy who runs this coaching program said that reading this book changed the trajectory of his life. And after reading it, I can fully see why that is.
Whoa.
Because there's just, how do I articulate this in a way that doesn't, that somehow does it justice?
Wait,
I
so
probably won't be able to.
This book wasn't his memoir. He wrote a memoir, then he wrote this book, and this book is about storytelling.
This book is about it's it's about how it's sort of like a narrative. Like he's telling the story of kind of his years from having finished writing the memoir, and he's written a few other books, and like, but they've not been too huge. And then these filmmakers come along, and he talks about kind of the transformation in his life as he sort of realizes that actually, you know, we're trying to create a fake version of me, the fake version of me who lives an interesting story.
Right.
And he realizes kind of throughout the book that essentially the version of the fake Donald that they're trying to create in this movie is the sort of dream version of himself, the version of himself that he wishes he were, because, you know, they're taking his life events, but they're making them more interesting. They're making him tell a more interesting story.
Okay.
Let me just see if I can find some of my highlights from this. Oh, here we go. This is the first one I highlighted. It didn't occur to me at the time, but it's obvious now that in creating the fictional Donald, I was creating the person I wanted to be, the person worth telling stories about. It never occurred to me that I could recreate my own story, my real life story, but in an evolution I had moved towards a better me. I was creating someone I could live through, the person I'd be if I redrew the world. A character that was me, but flesh and soul other, and flesh and soul better too. And so that's kind of like his opening in his prologue. And as he talks about the story, it's structured in the format of a story. So like, you know, a story being defined as where you've got a character, the character wants something, and the character has to overcome conflict to get the thing, and the character is changed as a result. So those are like, exactly. So those are like the four kind of sections of the book, and the way it's told is just absolutely incredible. And like this was, I was reading this while on my on-call shift yesterday, because I had a few hours of kind of spare time, so I was just kind of lying in the doctor's office on the couch, and I genuinely was crying at like kind of 3 or 4 different moments just at like the stories he was telling.
Wow.
Because of, like, for example, he talks about how he grew up without a dad, and how he would always kind of say that, oh well, I don't really need to find my dad, and then he kind of goes on this quest to find the dad, purely in an attempt to kind of live a more interesting story. Like he says, you know, what would fictional Donald do? You know, where's the interesting story here? Like I've got one of these whole chapters highlighted just because it was such a powerful story that made me cry, but I can't like recite all of it here. But yeah, no, it's just like okay. What am I trying to say here? I'm trying to say here is that the reason that this hit me so strongly is because as he was talking about how his own life is boring and there's no interesting story there, because essentially what he's saying is that he's not really taken any major risks. He hasn't kind of gone through major struggles, and it's kind of these risks and these struggles in pursuit of a kind of higher cause that makes a story interesting. And I was kind of looking back at my life and thinking, what real risks have I taken? What real struggles have I gone through? Like, where, you know, am I living a story that I would want to tell? And the answer in my head was like, I don't think so. Like, I think I've just kind of fairly easily sort of breezed through life just off the back of kind of, you know, a pretty comfortable home environment, a pretty comfortable education system. And as I was reading all these things, I was like, it was a feeling that this guy is like speaking to me and kind of encouraging me to live a more story-worthy life. Wow. And this guy, for example, you know, he like goes on a bike ride across the whole of America despite being fat and overweight and stuff, and he can't ride a bike to save his life. Yeah. Just because he knows that it's going to be a good story. And so the thing I want to talk about is, I'm not sure to what extent I fully agree with this. It seems to be that the thesis he's espousing is that for a life to have been worth living, it must be story worthy, i.e. there must be kind of conflict, struggles, and in pursuit of a higher cause. And I don't know. I'm not sure how fully I would agree with that.
Yeah, I don't really like that as a metric, to be honest. Like, it's, like the sort of story worthiness as like the yardstick. It feels similar to, you know, how like all the boomers are writing think pieces about how the millennials are like obsessed with what their life would look like on Instagram versus what, you know, the actual life that they're living. And it kind of feels similar. It's like a performance. It's like trying to live some kind of performance rather than, you know, I don't know, like it doesn't sit well with me. So like what was good about this? I like it sounds like his story was pretty compelling. Like, you know, he had some personal anecdotes and things, and like it sounds like it would be a good read, interesting read about someone's life and like an intimate view into their life. That seems good. But like, it doesn't sound like you were convinced that story worthiness is a good metric for living your life.
I wasn't fully convinced that story worthiness is a good metric, but I was semi-convinced because, you know, as you know, and as I've discussed on this podcast a few times before, it's like I feel like I'm at this crossroads in my life where either I sort of pursue medicine and kind of go down the straight path, or I do something rogue, like kind of just go around the world bumming around. That's sort of the simple version of the narrative. And this was yet another kind of nail in the coffin of me doing medicine. Because if I think, on any metric, it just doesn't make any sense at all. Like, there is absolutely no story-worthy component to that. Potentially, the story-worthy component could be that, there's this struggle to try and move to America to try and do medicine there, but it's not much of a struggle, really. Like, come on.
Yeah. What?
Yeah. There's no like struggle involved in that. Whereas I was thinking that, I could like travel the world and like, just do one backpack and then like hike this trail. And I just had all these kind of wanderlust type thoughts while reading through this. Plus, it was just like a really good story, and there was some really like nice moving bits to it.
Look, I'll tell you what angle I think like thinking about life as a story might be something I get on board with. And this is something I've thought at various points over the past few years, where sometimes like life always comes down to like decision making at various junctures, right? Like it's all about there are these junctures where you have to decide between various options, and it's all about like figuring out the best option to pick, right? And one of the things that I found helpful is to kind of, and I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast, but I think I've talked to you about it before, is to kind of step outside my body and observe myself as a third party, the impartial observer, which we maybe talked about an episode or two ago. But like, just like step outside of my body and look at myself and think, what is this chump gonna do? Is this guy really gonna like, just like see yourself from a third person point of view and think about the story that you are writing in this moment by the decisions you're making, and think about like, okay, this character, he's a lazy piece of shit. Like he's got it so easy, and he's still not doing any work.
He's sitting on the toilet watching David Dobrik vlogs, reruns of them.
Yeah, exactly. So like, you kind of step outside yourself and you look at kind of like, the story that you're writing, and it's like, okay, do I want that story to be X or do I want that story to be Y? So I think the story thing is useful as a tool to kind of view yourself in the third person, which is sort of often, I don't know, it helps me see things a bit more like objectively sometimes. And so I think it doesn't sound like that's the angle this Donald was taking, though.
As in, it sort of is. I mean, what he's saying is that prior to this experience of editing his life to make it more interesting, he was living a fairly normal life, and through the process of actively thinking about how to edit his life in a way that would be interesting, he realized he was living a boring life, and it was not the sort of life that he wanted to live.
Okay, that's fine.
And therefore, a lot of the stuff that he does is kind of thinking about, okay, what would make a good story here? Kind of like what you're saying, like when he decides to embark on a quest to find his dad, like a huge part of him wants to procrastinate from it and just not do it. But then it's the fact that this would make a more compelling story that drives him forward to do that thing.
Okay. Yeah, I think the story thing in that context, maybe I can accept it as like a useful hack to like, make you do the right thing from time to time. But is he actually proposing this as like a guiding principle for how to live or how to measure? I don't think.
I mean, I've still got like 20% of the book left, so maybe there's going to be a massive twist at the end about how it's actually all about accepting Jesus. There've been quite a few like
what?
There have been quite a few Christian sort of a few kind of little bits of Christianity like peppered in there. I think he's building up to a climax or something like that on that front.
Oh, okay.
But like, so there's a quote here which I thought was interesting that I highlighted. The ambitions we have. Oh, hang on. Let's see. Let me see if I can get you the context. Okay, so he's talking about for example, the advertising industry. He says that before he started writing, he was a marketer, and his job was to sell stuff to people and convince them that they wanted it. And he says that the thing I never realized was that studying marketing in the process of advertising products is in many ways the manipulation of the elements of a story. We watch a commercial advertising a new Volvo, and suddenly we feel our life isn't as content as it once was. Our life doesn't have the new Volvo in it. And if the commercial convinces us we will only be content if we have a car with 47 airbags. And so we begin our story of buying a Volvo, only to repeat the story with a new weed eater and then a new home stereo. And this can go on for a lifetime. When the credits roll, we wonder what we did with our lives and what was the meaning. It's all very seductive and rather fascinating. I saw a commercial the other day for a dishwashing liquid. The opening scene showed a woman standing over a sink of greasy dishes, scrubbing hard against some dried up lasagna that wouldn't come off a plate. Her hair was disheveled, the kids were running around in the kitchen, and her husband was probably off watching television. The woman standing cried out to God, "How can this be happening to me?" And then the new dishwashing liquid was introduced. There was a magic graphic about how it had bubbles and stuff, and after the magic bubbles were explained, we were back in the woman's kitchen. The woman's hair was done, she was down 20 pounds, the kids were doing their homework, and the husband was back in the picture, holding his arms around the woman's waist. He says, "The cultural scripts running through that commercial are numerous, but the point of it seems much grander than a simple illustration of an effective dishwashing liquid." Actually, when you really break the commercial down, honestly, looking at the subtext, the commercial seems to be saying something more direct. If you use this dishwashing liquid, people will want to have sex with you.
Wait, where can I get some of that?
He says, I know, you'll be disappointed. He says, "I know for a fact it isn't true about the dishwashing liquid. I have 3 cases in my pantry. I'm a sucker for this sort of thing, and apparently so are the rest of you." And then this is the bit that I highlighted. "The ambitions we have will become the stories we live. If you want to know what a person's story is about, just ask them what they want. If we don't want anything, we are living boring stories. And if we want a Roomba vacuum cleaner, we are living stupid stories. If it won't work in a story, it won't work in life."
This is weird, man. If we don't want anything, we're living boring stories. Dude,
yeah, that's what I.
If we don't want anything, that's the whole goal, to not want anything.
And that was the bit that I had that I took issue with, because as I was reading that, I was thinking, I feel like I don't really want anything in my life right now because I'm pretty content with how things are. And then I was thinking, damn, is that a boring story? Because in a story, you've got to want something and you've got to kind of overcome conflict to get it. And then I was like, oh, hang on, wait a minute. Maybe I should actually start wanting stuff and having like goals and like I don't know, man. This seems shallow. I'm going to come out and say it seems shallow. Why was it so profound for you? Okay, like let's pretend like you weren't facing this Sophie's choice of like, should I do medicine or should I like travel the world or something? Oh, that's a good reference. Where does the phrase Sophie's choice comes from?
Okay, so my understanding is, I first heard it in Modern Family. Cam has a whole bit in season 1 about like. He gets emotional about Sophie's choice. Apparently, he's a big fan of Meryl Streep. So my understanding is it's a film starring Meryl Streep where she has to make like a really big choice between 2 things, one of which involves her child or something. That's as much as I've gleaned from like rewatching this Modern Family episode a bunch of times, like 7 years ago.
So I feel I first came across the phrase Sophie's choice in like year 5. I feel like it came up in the context of like an English lesson or something like that.
Year 5?
Yeah.
Are you sure
I have a distinct memory.
There wasn't a girl called Sophie in your class? Are you sure that was?
There was a girl called Sophie in your class.
Oh, there was. I remember Sophie. Yeah.
There wasn't in mine, but I distinctly remember Mrs. Adams talking about Sophie's choice. Oh. Anyway, yes, you were saying. So let's pretend. I don't have.
Yeah, you weren't going through. The hardest problem.
Like, the hardest problem anyone's faced.
And you read this book about this guy saying like, hey man, you gotta like, think about the story. Your life has to look good as a story. Like, would you really have read that and thought, man, this guy's got it all figured out?
I kind of got a sense that I wonder what I'm missing here. So I'll read you another bit. So this is where he's like, he goes off on this like Inca trail in Peru to Machu Picchu on a whim because a mate asked him and he was like, yeah, all right, I want to live a story. Let's go on this trail. And he says, something changed after I visited my father. Perhaps it was visiting my father and hiking the Inca Trail too. I was living a story, a life designed and lived with intention. I was watching less television and enjoying being in better shape. I had a long way to go on all fronts, but story was certainly making life a more enjoyable experience. It was good to be pursuing a girl too. We were dating actually, and I liked her, and sharing a story with someone made the story more meaningful. I heard that in a movie, that other people testified that our lives are actually happening. It felt like that, I think. It felt as though I was designing stories for us, not just for me. And I found myself wanting even better stories. And that's the thing you'll realize when you organize your life into the structure of a story. You'll get a taste for one story and then want another, and then another, and the stories will build until you're living a kind of epic risk and reward, and the whole thing will be molding you into the actual character whose roles you've been playing. And once you live a good story, you get a taste for being for a kind of meaning in life, and you can't go back to being normal. You can't go back to meaningless scenes stitched together by forgettable thread of wasted time. The more practiced stories I lived, the more I wanted an epic to climb inside of and see through till its end. And yeah, this is just another kind of example of the... because people do this sort of stuff, right? Like, I feel like when when Mimi was on a quest to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, that was like, you know, some sort of meaning in life that I feel kind of from reading this and from hearing other people's experiences of it, that you only really get by kind of overcoming a struggle that you don't think you can do.
Right, yeah, that's fine, but like there's a difference between the story being like the byproduct of what you're doing and the story being like the reason that you do something. I think like the story, thinking about the story as the reason you do something, it just seems shallow, man.
Shallow as in inauthentic, or
yeah.
Okay, I will get back to you on this front after I finish the book, because maybe there's a big gotcha at the end. But
yeah, maybe it's like, how
he's like,
you believed all that, you idiot.
Yeah. Actually, what I realized is that it's not about the story at all.
Yeah,
the story is just a distraction. It's all about relationships.
Yeah,
which brings us on to transactional analysis.
Wow, nice.
No, so fine. So that was one more thing.
Yeah, what was the other thing?
The other thing was that
a bit better than the story thing.
No, I don't think it is really. Kind of on a completely different vein. I was listening to a podcast in the car this morning on the way to work, and this evening on the way back from work, and it was about how to gain more margin in your personal life.
Oh yeah,
you know, margin being the idea that, you know, we're all like overloaded with stuff, and we want to have more time to do the things that we want to do, and less time doing the stuff that we don't want to do. And this was like these two, a few like businessy type people, as in who run like internet businesses type things,
right? Talking
about how they were building margin in their personal lives. And like one of them was like a mum of 5 kids, you know, four kids, and like they just adopted like a brand new sort of 25-week-old child or something like that. And basically they were talking about that thing that we had an episode about, which is kind of treating your personal life like a business. Yeah. And eliminating, automating, and delegating various aspects of household management. And it was this is really the first time that I've heard this sort of stuff applied so explicitly to the realm of the house, because like it's a pretty standard trope in kind of the tech world and the business world that you want to value your time at a certain amount of money.
Yep.
And once you've done that, you realize there are things that you don't want to do, and therefore you kind of pay other people to do them for you.
Yep.
Essentially. And this is the argument for, you know, why I got a cleaner one time, because I was like, you know what, I don't want to spend this 2 hours of my life trying to clean the house. It would be nice if the house was just like magically clean.
Yeah.
But like these guys were taking it to the next level, and I don't think this is particularly next level. It's just like the first time that I'd really come across the concept, which is like, you know, what they had like and this sounds really shallow now, or sounds really basic now, but they had like this kind of like a gardening type service thing where kind of once a week these like 3 dudes come and they just kind of like mow your lawn and like trim the bushes and stuff on Friday so that you can enjoy the lawn with your kids on the weekend.
You mean a gardener? They had a gardener.
They had a gardener.
Okay.
And one of them also had like a sort of household manager type person, like a housekeeper.
Okay, yeah.
And was talking about what it's like having a housekeeper, and like one of them had a full-time housekeeper, one of them had a part-time housekeeper who would kind of be in the house from like 8 till 12 every day, and like, you know, make the whole family breakfast, and then like, you know, make the whole family lunch, and then prepare the dinner. So all they had to do was be put in the microwave, and would do the laundry and change the sheets and all this sort of stuff. And we're talking about how like when you realize there's a sort of model which is like a 2x2 matrix, as it were. If you imagine a 2x2 matrix, I know it's quite hard. It's like on one. Is it rows and columns in a matrix, or are there?
Yeah, sure. Sure.
Yeah,
rows and columns.
In one row across the top, you've got whether you're good at this thing or bad at this thing, and across the column, you've got whether you enjoy doing this thing and whether you don't enjoy doing this thing. And the things that you are good at and you enjoy is your zone of desire or your zone of genius, like where you should be spending all your time. The stuff that you aren't good at and you don't enjoy is the stuff that you should absolutely never be done. It's your zone of drudgery. Yeah. And then the other two are sort of like distractions, because you either enjoy it but you're not very good at it. Okay, fine. Or you don't enjoy it but you are good at it, in which case you can probably get someone else to do it for you. But they're basically saying that in the realm of like automating household management and things like that, it's fully worth like spending a crap ton of money on it, because then you can actually do more worthwhile things, like, I don't know, spend more time with your kids, or like, you know, work on your business, or kind of do the stuff that you actually want to do, rather than worry about managing the house, which becomes a full-time occupation.
Yeah.
And it was just, I thought it was interesting because it was the first time that I'd kind of heard people candidly talk about the fact that they employ a housekeeper, kind of part-time or full-time, as like a thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I just wanted to share that, and I wondered what your thoughts are, given that you feel strongly about treating your personal life like a business.
Yeah, I'm on board with that. Yeah, I think the housekeeper thing, I was recently exposed to the housekeeper thing via a friend of mine who runs a company in London, and he has a housekeeper who he's like he lives on his own. He's the guy who lives on our floor in London, in our sort of block of apartments. And
the one that you've been meaning to hang out with, but you never do.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, he has this housekeeper who does his groceries, cleans his place like twice a week or something, and basically just like takes care of his life. It's basically like a paid mum. And he said to us, "Look, guys, I've got this great housekeeper. You should do the same thing. Get her to come in a couple of times a week. She'll do your groceries. She'll clean the place for you." And initially, I thought, dude, are you serious? Like, what the hell are you talking about? Why do I need a housekeeper? But then we kind of thought about it, and we do actually employ her. Once every 2 weeks, she comes and cleans the whole place. And this has actually been quite nice because it means that we never have to do the kind of the annoying, time-consuming deep cleaning tasks, like, cleaning the lime scale off of the shower and doing a deep clean of the bathroom or something. And like she like does a deep clean every 2 weeks. We hoover the place a couple of times a week. We wipe down the surfaces after we use them. But I'm really glad that we don't have to like do the annoying deep cleaning thing for like a couple of hours once a week. Like that would suck. So I do get it.
Okay, cool.
I'm on board with that.
Nice.
But I think there's there's like a very strong like 80-20 or even like 90-10 where, I think very few people need a full-time housekeeper to do absolutely everything for them. But if you can just abstract away the kind of big annoying stuff, which would be like once every 2 weeks or something, then it doesn't cost you that much money. And like, come on, like wiping down the surfaces takes a couple of minutes every evening or something. I think there's like, I think treating your personal life as a business can go a bit far when you're like constantly evaluating your time. Like, you're washing the dishes and you're thinking like, oh man, I could be like doing something productive right now. It's like, shut up, dude. Just wash the dishes and get over it. Like it takes 2 minutes, learn to like, learn to just be at peace. So yeah, I think like strongly 80-20ing the housekeeper thing is pretty good.
Yeah, that's reasonable. I suppose if you've got like, a family of 5, then it would make more sense to have more. Yeah. Whereas just like as a random dude living in a house, you probably don't need a housekeeper particularly.
Yeah, I don't know why he has a housekeeper, man.
So on a similar vein, it's actually been 2 weeks since I hired a personal assistant.
Oh, nice. How is that going?
So that's been very interesting. So in the UK, the title would be personal assistant. In America, it would be called executive assistant because, the idea is that she helps with kind of business stuff, but also with like personal stuff. And in the UK, that's just kind of like colloquially known as a PA, whereas in the US, it's called an EA, executive assistant, which sounds all like corporate and weird.
Okay.
But it's been very interesting because it feels very like, I basically feel like an absolute twat. That's the problem.
Why? Like, what kind of stuff does she do for you?
As in, so I'd started off before kind of making the hire by like making a list of things that I would, in a dream world, I would like a PA, a personal assistant to kind of cover. On that list was things like, figure out how to set up a PO box so I can get fan mail, or, figure out how to change the, or, figure out how to change the business addresses so my home address isn't just publicly visible online to everyone to see. But on that list were also things like, remind me sort of a few days before friends' birthdays and suggest some presents that I could buy for the friends, so I can just be like, yeah, that's a good idea, let's do that, right. Part of this thing of systematizing relationship management.
Yeah.
But also on that list was figure out some kind of meal prep, grocery delivery schedule for me, whereby I can learn how to cook healthy meals without having to think about it too hard.
Okay.
All of this sort of stuff, and it's been going really well so far, and I'm finding that now I'm sort of doing that thing where when I'm doing stuff, I'm thinking I could very easily do this myself, but I'm going to delegate it to the PA just because I know that this is sort of it's good to get into the habit of doing that. And this is one thing that one of my kind of mentors slash some guy who's a business coach, Liam actually, was talking about. He was saying that the point of having an assistant isn't that you don't do anything yourself. It's that you start to get used to delegating things that you really don't have to be doing, so that later on, as your business grows, you've already kind of flexed that muscle, so you don't need to. It's not as much of a leap when you actually do genuinely need an assistant.
Okay,
but it's been kind of weird, right? Because it's like this person whose job it is basically just to make me happy and to make my life easy.
Okay.
And in a way, it seems like an old sort of relationship, right? Because it's not quite like having employees, right? Because I've got my editor and I've got Angus who kind of helps write some of the content, because that's a sort of defined thing that they've sort of applied for a job for. But then this girl, she's like just applied to be my assistant and kind of just help me out with whatever.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, like a lot of the time when I kind of message her on Slack or on iMessage or something, be like, hey, Liz, can you help me with this thing? I just feel like I'm just a massive twat because like, why the hell do I need a PA? But I know this is just like one of those like limiting mindsets, which is similar to like, oh God, why the hell do I need a housekeeper? I'm not that big a deal.
Yeah. I think it's like, I think there are lots of things where the first time you think about it, it seems extreme. I think another one of those things is like, if you think about the concept of like, I should keep a MacBook charger in every single room of my house, so that when I decide to relocate from my desk to the sofa, I don't have to take a charger with me. It seems ludicrous. It seems like the most entitled thing ever.
It seems like, mate, just pick up the charger, plug it in.
Yeah.
Stop being such an arrogant twat.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is similar to what you said about the washing dishes thing.
No, I was making a different argument for the washing dishes thing.
I don't think you were.
No, I was.
You were saying it's not that hard to wash the dishes, mate, just do it.
Yeah, some things just like take a couple of minutes, and
unplugging your charger takes like 10 seconds.
No. Crucially.
Oh no, because yours is underneath the desk and you have
No, it's not about the time. Crucially, it's like a blocker, like after a meal, you're not in the middle of an activity. Like after a meal, you've like paid for the fixed cost of that meal, right? Washing the dishes is a 2-minute marginal cost on top of that, which does absolutely, it makes no difference. Whereas the charger thing is like, it's a disruptive thing, right? If I want to go to the sofa, no, but look, I think the charger thing is one of those things where like, it seems so ludicrous. Like,
okay, no, wait. I'm still not convinced by your washing dishes example, because I could easily think that the fact that washing the dishes takes me 2 minutes means that dishes pile up, and therefore I end up living in squalor and poverty, squalor rather than poverty, and therefore I'm living a bad life.
Fine. If like you struggle with dishes and they pile up, yeah, fine, get a cleaner or something.
Okay, fine.
I have no objection to that, but I object to like the constantly evaluating like how I'm spending my time or something. Like, I think because here's the issue. I think like it's very like surface level thinking to think that like any time spent like not producing work artifacts or something is time wasted.
It's not about not producing work artifact. It's about any time spent doing stuff that you don't like doing.
Yeah, sure. Okay, if you really don't like doing the dishes, don't do the dishes. But my point is that I think that mindset can be taken too far, and there is something to be said for being able to sort of appreciate and get value from various things in life that on the face of it are like kind of dull. For example, I think washing the dishes is pretty fun.
I think
I think there is something to be said for trying to live in a way where you can appreciate and get value from things by default, rather than a mindset of like, I get value from X, Y, and Z, and everything else is a waste of time, and I'm only going to do X, Y, and Z. Like, it's fine, yeah. If you've got money, fine. You can end up just doing X, Y, and Z in your life. I just think it's kind of valuable to try and have a frame of mind where you stretch yourself to be able to get value from things that you otherwise, wouldn't think as valuable.
Okay, yeah, I'm on board with that. It's like the idea of kind of doing everything sort of with there's this pamphlet that I wrote about in my email newsletter, which is a manual for spring cleaning your house. And it was written in like the 1980s or something, and this was on some productivity blog, obviously. But the point the guy was making on the productivity blog is that in this manual, the main thing is that all of your effort should be focused on this task. And if you if you do everything with that kind of intentionality, then washing the dishes or ironing or ironing your laundry or whatever becomes like you start to appreciate the joy in that just by kind of focusing on it.
Exactly.
Fine. I'm on board with that.
That's what I'm saying. Anyway, my point was like, there are things that seem crazy, like the charger thing, and in your case, like getting an assistant, where like if you do the math, it makes sense. Like if you do the maths, it's a worthwhile investment. It just seems weird because you're not used to living like that.
Okay, yeah, you're right. It is a worthwhile investment if I do the maths, but that's exactly what seems weird because it just feels like what sort of person have I become?
This is mate. This would be a great segue into transaction analysis. This is a perfect example of the overarching parent.
Wait, what?
Don't worry, it'll all be clear. I'll be basically after I explain the basics of transaction analysis to you next week. Then we'll be able to look at this situation in a new light, and you'll be able to. I've obviously made perfect sense of it as someone who's
as an enlightened thinker.
As a higher level thinker. After we go through the basics of TA next week, I will be able to help you make sense of this thing in your life.
Yeah, and so I can become a more enlightened, high level thinker potentially.
Yes, yeah.
But not quite at your level because you found it first.
Oh yeah, sure. Wait, maybe.
Okay. I think that's a good place to end this. This has been a rambly enough discussion. I think we've got enough content out for the week.
Wait. I think I'd just like to make a couple of points about margin.
Of course. Please.
So I think the margin thing, we've talked about this before, and
can you define margin for those of us unfamiliar with the phrase?
It's just like some breathing room, some like breathing room in your life that lets you do random things. Sundays is usually designated my margin day, but today it wasn't much of a margin day because I didn't get enough stuff done during the week. But I've been pretty good for the past couple of Sundays as having it as a margin day, and I spent my last margin day, which was a week ago, looking into something which I'd been meaning to look into for a while, and that is old people. I think
you spent last Sunday looking into old people.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I think I
mean, that's basically my day job, but
nice.
Thank you.
I think young people don't really, young people. I don't really understand old people, as in I don't really have an appreciation for what their kind of worldview is. And I'm obviously generalizing here, but to an extent, there are generalizations that can be made. There are things that old people share in common that young people do not share with them. All right. So don't accuse me of don't you sit there and accuse me of sorry.
Of ageism.
Yeah. Look, I feel like, I want to develop a bit more empathy with, the experience of being an old person in society. And a few things that triggered this. I think there is, this is something that I'd like to write about at length, soonish. I think there is a problematic view of old people that many young people have. It is a problematic view of I think it mostly comes down to infantilization. I think young people infantilize old people nowadays. And every time I encounter this, it just it really irks me. And I was like, oh man, this is so weird. And I was thinking, okay, I should do some digging. I'm certain this is a thing. This is not just in my head. This is a phenomenon that is happening. Other people must have thought about this. I'd like to understand old people. And so the first thing I did was type in Reddit old people on Google, and boom, there is a subreddit called Ask Old People where young people can ask questions to old people and the old people answer the questions. And it helps bridge the divide. And so I was trying to find out, I was trying to use this infantilization thing as a starting point for kind of understanding a little bit about the old person experience, and it's a complete thing. So an example of this would be I think there's a thing that young people do, which is performative affection for older people. Flexing how much you love your parents on social media. And the worst thing is referring to old people as cute, of my grandma's so adorable kind of thing. And it just really grinds my gears. And I was like, okay, let's look into this. And, so I did some digging, and just on there's a couple of points which I found so far which are interesting. The first is on the infantilization thing. And I think there was a thread, where someone asked, at what age did you like realize you're an old person or something? You know, when did you like realize that you were officially an old person in society? And someone commented, one of the biggest things that tipped me off was how the world around me was treating me. Younger people started using loud voices and cajoling language to speak to me as if I had hearing loss and wasn't able to understand normal conversation, similar to baby talk. This was very painful for me, soul crushing. I realized that this is how the world was viewing me now. My thought is that why older people get testy with a I don't give an F attitude is because the world starts treating them like uncomprehending imbeciles. And someone else said, it really was one of the more terrible things I've had to come to terms with because it concerns one's identity, and that's a hell of a blow to grapple with. People look over you, around you, they're no longer looking at you in the eye, they speak to you in overly loud, sing-song, condescending voices. It's devastating. It also makes the day-to-day things harder to accomplish. It makes taking care of yourself and protecting yourself more difficult because it seems no one is taking you or anything you say seriously. Day-to-day experiences are less joyful, harder to get through because of it. And someone else, another young person, commented, in response, something like, this must feel terrible. I also hate when people on Reddit put their grandparents' pics on the aw subreddit, AWW, like, or as in like, oh, what a cute thing. The subreddit that's meant for pets, and calling old people adorable is really condescending. And I totally agree. And it was like really interesting and eye-opening to like hear firsthand from old people about like, this is how society, this is like how people treat them in society. The other thing, which I find it, I think it's one of the particularly big rifts between young people and old people, is the extent to which, like, old people are more fragile, right? And so they have to think about their safety a lot more. And so I'll read out a couple of anecdotes that I thought were pretty interesting. I think this was a thread about like the quarantine or something. And someone said, I've been in self-isolation since the beginning of last September. Whoa. Why? Okay. I can't remember why. My wife is in a nursing home now. She isn't coming home. I have home health aides who come in during the week. On the weekends, I'm on my own. It's the weekends that I dread. If I fuck up and get into trouble, there will be no one who knows about it until Monday morning. I have severe mobility issues. I can count on my fingers the times I've been out of the house since she's been gone. That's not really something that young people really have to think about. Like, what happens if I fall over, or what happens if I have an accident? It's just like, so yeah, I think you, as a young person, certainly me anyway, you kind of go through life feeling invincible, right? And I think it's like very different for old people. There's a couple of thoughts on friendship. I thought the friendship stuff was particularly interesting that I want to do some more digging into. So here's one comment. We all have a limited circle of close friends. As they/we die off, we're left with fewer, and making friends late in life is tough to do. It can lead to isolation. I knew a 96-year-old that outlived all of her friends and most of her siblings. You don't get to live a long life with a large group of friends. You live long enough to outlive your friends, or you die early with many. Make friends with your friends' spouses as well. You will be hanging out with them when the spouse dies, or you're an asshole. As you age, it helps if you lower your goals over your standard limits as to whom you call a friend too. Don't be so picky. They'll have to lower their standards for you too. And another comment was, turned 50 this year, and I guess you have to start redefining what close friendship means. It no longer means someone you see every day. It doesn't even mean someone you see every week. It means someone you see every now and then, and email, text, or message to keep up with and make sure they're doing all right. And sometimes you invite over to chat or for dinner. It's someone you care about without seeing them all the time because you know their life is busy and yours may be too. And the final thing, which was on isolation, which I think is another big kind of thing I'd like to look into about old people. Someone said, I think social isolation is something we all trend towards, and also something that if we care about our health, we will take steps to keep healthy. Doesn't much matter what. I became a competitive lifter and hang out with humans a third my age. Others have an active church life or book clubs. Honestly, doesn't matter. We all need human contact. Seek it out. Isolation, friendship, safety, infantilization. These were like the topics I looked into last Sunday. And I found a good book reference also via the subreddit called Bowling Alone by Robert Putnam. I tried to find it on Kindle. I think it didn't have a Kindle version. So I'm going to have to dig up the PDF of that somehow to get it on Kindle.
as opposed to buy the book.
I need it on Kindle, bro.
I'm glad you're a Kindle convert.
No, I buy the book too as well. So like, I bought this transaction analysis book on Kindle, and I read it on Kindle first. But then when I sat down to like start summarizing things so I could talk about it clearly on the podcast, I thought it's just too hard to flick through a Kindle book, and I just bought the hard copy, and I like flick through that and find bits and bobs. And
Mate, have you tried using an iPad? The Kindle app on iPad is amazing for flicking through a book.
I don't know, man. I don't buy it. Maybe
like the physical.
Yeah, maybe one day. But yeah, I think old people is one of my margin day activities these days.
The old people stuff is interesting. It's something I've often also thought about. There was that film. I think you were there when we watched it in St Albans Cinema, which was about. I think it was called like Edith or something. It was about that woman who wants to like climb the mountain or something. Yeah, like that. And there was that scene where, and that's basically a whole story about how everyone is kind of underestimating her because she's old. Yeah. And there's that scene where she's like in some like home or something, visiting someone, and getting involved in the arts and crafts. And like, the sort of 17-year-old volunteer says, "Oh, watch out for the scissors, Edith, they're sharp." And she kind of looks at the camera and everyone kind of laughs because they know kind of the experience, because like most people in that cinema were quite old. Yeah. So I feel like everyone could relate to that sort of thing. Yeah. I was thinking that damn, this is exactly how we talk to old people. But then in fairness, like, often you do have to raise your voice and talk to them in a sort of, yeah, sure. But yeah, I can appreciate that side of the old people thing. On a somewhat related note, what I was thinking about was about how growing old means you then stop getting jokes. Like, there was that thing that was going around WhatsApp of people kind of that I think you were forwarding it to people. The meme of everyone forwarding each other Ramadan Mubarak messages. Yeah. And the one that you forwarded was one being like, "Hey, I just wanted to send a personalized message that's not forwarded. A happy 2016 Ramadan Mubarak or something from your friend Tanvir." Yeah. And I thought it was interesting because like all of the people who saw that were like lol and forwarded it to like their parents, and very few of the parents got the joke. They were like, who's Tanvir? Like, what's going on? And so what I was thinking then is that like, the parents aren't even that old. They're like in their 40s/50s. And I was wondering, when I'm in my 40s and 50s, and if I get the equivalent of that sort of joke, will I also not really get what's going on?
No, dude, that's not about like old people not getting jokes. That's just about the medium of technology. Like, for example, part of getting that joke is understanding that when you forward a message in WhatsApp, it says forwarded. Like, it's forwarded. Like, that's part of the joke. Okay, like, it's a technology thing. It's not an old people thing.
I'm not saying it's an old people thing. I'm saying the point I'm making is that as we get older, we get less attuned to of the cultural zeitgeist of the young people, and therefore don't have the requisite knowledge to appreciate a joke like that. Yeah, for sure. And I feel like that would be depressing, because then sort of the kids are sort of making fun of the parents for not getting the joke. And like sharing screenshots of the parents not getting the joke. And it was something that made me think, damn, I don't really want to be this way when I'm old.
The thing is, then it's not so bad, because like we're already starting to face it a bit with like being out of touch with the latest tech. Being late to the whole TikTok thing. I don't know what the kids do nowadays. Like, culturally, we are becoming more irrelevant in terms of what people are doing. Yeah, and it's not so bad. And I think it's not so bad because it kind of reinforces your own sense of like tribal membership of like, I'm not one of
this is my generation.
Yeah.
I'm a millennial.
Yeah, exactly. And you kind of embrace it, and there's like a sense of, identity somewhere in there.
It's kind of a sense of those damn kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I think that's a good place to end this, unless you had more points to discuss.
No.
Cool. What's our insight of the week? I feel like my insight of the week was that I feel like I should be asking myself more, am I living an interesting story?
Yeah, that sounds like a good insight for you. I'm just seeing what I tweeted this week.
Your insight of the week is to have more empathy towards old people.
Yeah, man. Alright, my insight of the week is that everyone should watch Money Heist. I've been watching it with Mimi.
Okay, no spoilers.
With dinner
no spoilers
this week. And yeah, it's so good, man.
Wait, has it got multiple seasons?
Yeah.
So it's not like a new show?
It's not new. No, I think the season 1 was like in 2018, 2017 or something.
Damn.
I've been seeing it come up on Netflix for a while, and it always looked cool, but I never got around to watching it. But yeah, it's really good.
It took me a while to realize it was an English dub.
Really?
For a few minutes, I was wondering why aren't the lips moving, and I was like, oh, okay, it's all set. Oh, I get it. It's in Spanish.
Yeah.
But it's a very well done English dub. Have you seen that YouTube video that was going around on recommended, at least on my homepage, which was how they dub Pokemon in English?
Oh, it came up on my feed, but I didn't click on it. It looked interesting. I was like, I don't have time right now.
It's really interesting. You were like, click on David Dobrik.
Yeah.
No, it's actually really interesting. It's really cool how they do it. It's so involved.
Oh wow, I'll check it out.
Yeah, you should definitely check it out. But yeah, good place to end it. All right, thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you next week, where we're going to be talking about, or rather, where Tame's going to be teaching me about, and us, by extension, about transactional analysis.
Cool. See you next time.
That's it for this week. Thank you for listening.
If you like this episode, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or on the Apple Podcast website if you're not using an iPhone. There's a link in the show notes.
If you've got any thoughts on this episode or any ideas for new podcast topics, we'd love to get an audio message from you with your conundrum, question, or just anything that we could discuss.
Yeah, if you're up for having your voice played on the podcast and your question being the springboard for our discussion, email us an audio file MP3 or voice note to hi@notoverthinking.com.
If you've got thoughts but you'd rather not have your voice played publicly, that's fine as well. Tweet or DM us at @NOverthinking on Twitter, please.
Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.